Welcome, dear viewers, to a One Storyteller, where tales of courage, mystery, and the extraordinary come to life. Tonight we bring you a story that will shake you to your core, a tale of injustice, resilience, and the ultimate triumph of the human spirit. Prepare yourselves for a journey into the heart of darkness, where the unthinkable happens and heroes rise from the shadows. This is the story of a blind man, a Navy SEAL, and the thugs who made the mistake of underestimating him. Sit back and relax and let the story unfold. The camera pans out and the title appears in bold, dramatic text. Racist thugs attack blind black man, unaware he is the most legendary Navy SEAL. The sun was setting over the small town of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. The town was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and nothing ever happened. Until that fateful evening. Ezekiel "Zeke" Thompson was a familiar sight in Willow Creek. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, Zeke was often seen walking the streets with his white cane, his dark sunglasses hiding eyes that had long since lost their sight. He moved with a quiet confidence, his steps sure and deliberate, as if he could see the world around him. But Zeke was blind, and had been for over a decade. The townsfolk knew little about Zeke's past. He had moved to Willow Creek 5 years ago, keeping to himself and rarely speaking unless spoken to. He lived in a small, modest house on the edge of town and spent his days tending to his garden and listening to old jazz records. To the people of Willow Creek, Zeke was just a quiet, blind man who kept to himself. But Zeke Thompson was anything but ordinary. Zeke's life had not always been so quiet. Once he had been a man of action, a warrior who had seen more than his fair share of battles. He had been a Navy SEAL, one of the best the United States had ever seen. His name was whispered with reverence in the halls of the Pentagon, and his exploits were the stuff of legend. But that was a lifetime ago. Zeke's world had changed forever on a mission in the mountains of Afghanistan. A routine extraction had gone horribly wrong, and Zeke had found himself face to face with an enemy he could not defeat. In the chaos of the firefight, a grenade had exploded too close, and Zeke had been blinded by the shrapnel. He had managed to complete the mission, saving the lives of his team, but the cost had been high. When he returned home, Zeke was hailed as a hero, but the accolades meant little to him. He had lost his sight, and with it the life he had known. The Navy had offered him a desk job, but Zeke had declined. He had no interest in sitting behind a desk, reliving his glory days. Instead, he had chosen to disappear, to live out the rest of his days in obscurity. But fate had other plans. It was a cool autumn evening when Zeke's quiet life was shattered. He was walking home from the local grocery store, his cane tapping lightly on the pavement, when he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He paused, listening intently. There were 3 of them, and they were closing in fast. Zeke's instincts kicked in, honed by years of training and combat. He could feel the tension in the air, the predatory intent of the men behind him. He knew what was coming. "Hey, old man," one of them called out, his voice dripping with malice. "You lost?" Zeke didn't respond. He kept walking, his pace steady, his senses on high alert. "Talking to you, blind man," the thug sneered, stepping in front of Zeke and blocking his path. "You think you're too good to talk to us?" Zeke stopped, his face expressionless. He could smell the alcohol on the man's breath, hear the nervous laughter of his companions. They were young, probably in their early 20s, and they were looking for trouble. "Leave me alone," Zeke said quietly, his voice calm but firm. The thug laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Or what? You gonna call the cops? You can't even see, old man. What are you gonna do?" Zeke didn't answer. He didn't need to. He could feel the thug's movements, the shift in his weight as he prepared to strike. Zeke's body tensed, ready to react. The thug swung, a wild, clumsy punch aimed at Zeke's face. But Zeke was faster. He ducked under the blow, his movements fluid and precise, and countered with a devastating strike to the thug's ribs. The man crumpled to the ground, gasping for breath. The other two thugs hesitated, shocked by the sudden turn of events. But their hesitation was short-lived. They charged at Zeke, their fists raised, their faces twisted with rage. Zeke moved like a shadow, his body a blur of motion. He disarmed the first thug with a swift, precise strike to the wrist, sending the knife clattering to the ground. The second thug lunged at him, but Zeke sidestepped the attack and delivered a powerful kick to the man's knee, dropping him to the ground. In less than a minute it was over. The three thugs lay on the ground, groaning in pain, their bravado shattered. Zeke stood over them, his breathing steady, his face calm. "You picked the wrong man to mess with," Zeke said quietly, before turning and walking away. The incident in the alleyway was the talk of the town. The three thugs, all known troublemakers, had been found battered and bruised, their egos more damaged than their bodies. They claimed they had been attacked by a gang of masked men, but no one believed them. The truth was far more shocking. Zeke's secret was out. The townsfolk of Willow Creek were stunned. The quiet, blind man they had known for years was a former Navy SEAL, a man who had single-handedly taken down 3 armed thugs without breaking a sweat. Overnight, Zeke became a local hero, a symbol of strength and resilience. But Zeke wanted none of it. He had no desire for fame or recognition. He had fought that night not for glory, but because he had no other choice. He had done what he had to do to survive. But the incident had stirred something in Zeke, something he had thought long buried. The fire that had once burned so brightly within him had been reignited, and he knew that he could no longer hide from his past. Zeke's life changed dramatically after the incident. The townsfolk of Willow Creek, once indifferent to his presence, now looked at him with a mixture of awe and respect. The local news stations wanted interviews, and the police asked for his help in dealing with the rising crime in the area. But Zeke had other plans. He knew that the thugs who had attacked him were just the tip of the iceberg. There was a deeper, more insidious problem in Willow Creek, one that had been festering for years. Racism, corruption, and violence were rampant, and the town was in desperate need of a hero. Zeke had never wanted to be a hero, but he knew that he could no longer stand by and do nothing. He had been given a second chance, and he was determined to make the most of it. With the help of a few trusted allies, Zeke began to clean up the town. He used his skills and experience to take down drug dealers, corrupt officials, and violent gangs. He became a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness. But Zeke's actions did not go unnoticed. The people he had targeted were powerful, and they were not about to let some blind ex-Navy SEAL ruin their operations. They fought back, and the battle for Willow Creek became a war. The final showdown took place on a cold, moonless night. Zeke had tracked the leader of the most powerful gang in Willow Creek to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The man was a ruthless criminal, responsible for countless acts of violence and corruption. He had to be stopped. Zeke moved through the shadows, his senses on high alert. He could hear the faint sound of voices, the rustle of clothing, the click of a gun being cocked. He knew that he was outnumbered, but he didn't care. He had faced worse odds before, and he had always come out on top. The warehouse was a maze of corridors and rooms, but Zeke navigated it with ease. He had memorized the layout earlier, and he moved with the precision of a predator stalking its prey. He found the gang leader in a large, dimly lit room, surrounded by his henchmen. The man was seated at a table, counting stacks of money, a smug smile on his face. He looked up as Zeke entered, his expression turning to one of shock and disbelief. "You," the gang leader spat, rising to his feet. "You're supposed to be dead." Zeke didn't respond. He simply stood there, his face calm, his body relaxed. He could feel the tension in the room, the fear and anger of the men around him. They were scared, and they had every reason to be. The gang leader barked an order and his men charged at Zeke, their weapons raised. But Zeke was ready. He moved like a whirlwind, his strikes precise and deadly. He disarmed the first man with a swift kick, then spun around and delivered a crushing blow to the second man's throat. The third man lunged at him with a knife, but Zeke sidestepped the attack and disarmed him with a single fluid motion. In less than a minute, the room was silent. The gang leader's men lay on the ground, unconscious or too injured to move. The gang leader himself was backed into a corner, his face pale with fear. "You think you can stop me?" the man snarled, his voice trembling. "You're just one man. You can't stop what's coming." Zeke didn't respond. He simply stepped forward, his expression calm, his movements deliberate. The gang leader raised his gun, but before he could pull the trigger, Zeke was on him. He disarmed the man with a swift, precise strike, then delivered a powerful blow to his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The gang leader lay there, gasping for breath, his eyes wide with fear. Zeke stood over him, his face calm, his breathing steady. "It's over," Zeke said quietly. "You lose." The fall of the gang leader marked the end of an era in Willow Creek. With their leader gone, the remaining members of the gang were quickly rounded up by the police, and the town began to heal. Zeke became a legend, a symbol of hope and justice. The townsfolk of Willow Creek looked up to him, and his story spread far and wide. But Zeke remained humble, refusing to take credit for what he had done. He had simply done what he had to do, and that was all. In the years that followed, Zeke continued to live a quiet life in Willow Creek. He tended to his garden, listened to his jazz records, and occasionally helped out the local police when they needed his expertise. He had found peace, and he was content. But Zeke knew that his past would always be a part of him. He had been a warrior, a hero, and he would always carry the scars of his battles. But he had also found a new purpose, a new reason to fight. He had become a protector, a guardian of the innocent. And he knew that he would never stop fighting for what was right. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to A1 Storyteller for more tales of adventure, mystery, and inspiration. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and never stop believing in the power of a good story.